Hi everyone, today I wanted to run through kind of a little bit of a work through plus tutorial on green screening. So for a while now, I have been doing a
In this
show
episode
called
of the Want List, Iron Man gets busted, Mortal Kombat statues continue to appear, and a statue that will add some bite to your collection.
And so this is a little show that you can find up on YouTube. It's called the Want List. I've been doing it for a couple of years on and off, but one of the things that we've decided to do differently in most recent times is to change our background and incorporate a little bit more of an interesting background than just a plain backdrop. So what I've done over in Premiere, and this is one of the workflow things that I really like about the Adobe products and why in the last year I've kind of switched away from Apple's Final Cut Pro Studio, including Soundtrack Pro and Motion and those kinds of things, and moved over completely to Premiere, is just how nice the integration is. So here I have an upcoming episode that was shot on green screen. It's all been edited down, and the only thing that's left at this point is to go in and remove the background and add some of the graphics in, and we're going to do that now. So here's one of the cool things. I can take this clip that I have already edited together, and if you're wondering about the video and audio, go look at my tutorial on double system sound and how you can do that with Pluralize. It's really fantastic. You can check that out as well. What I'm going to do is just right-click on this clip, and I'm going to scroll down to where it says Replace with Adobe After Effects Composition. Now this is going to open up After Effects, launch After Effects, and it's going to import our sequence, and it's only importing that segment that I imported. And so what we have here is we have our QuickTime movie file, and we have our two audio files just for purposes of syncing elements up later, and it's always a good reference to have your audio. But in this installment of the Want List, Fireflies in a Jar. So we have that all in there, and what we need to do again is we need to remove the background. A couple of things. We need to remove the background, we need to color correct, and we need to do some enhancements to this video. So what I have here is my background element. This was an element that I bought online from a virtual set store. What's interesting about this particular piece is that it has the monitor cut out in this particular background example. You could also have gone in and used a mask on the version of this set that does not have the element keyed out, but this is what we're going to use as our background. I'm going to go ahead and fit this up to 100% so we've got everything going in the scene. In that background, we are going to add this element. Now you will notice that this element looks a little squished, and that's because this is a 1440 by 1080 composition instead of a 1920 by 720. This was originally developed when we were shooting this in the Sony HDV format with a Z1U, but now that we're shooting everything with the Canon digital SLR series, everything now is 1920 by 1080. That's okay. I'll show you how we can fix that in just a little bit. So let's go back here to this movie clip, and there are a couple of things that we have problems with right away. The first is we're seeing lights that are lighting up the background, we're seeing the stands, we're seeing everything lit up, and it just doesn't look really great. So one of the first things we can do is we can create a garbage mask around the object, or around the subject, in this case me. I'm just going to tweak this just a little bit. And that should be okay. Now there's a couple of problems here. First of all, we've got this little corner space, which is really kind of problematic for us because that's going to cause some problems just in our key in general. And there are probably instances where, as this clip progresses, I reach out outside of that area. This can all be solved. We can see right here, we need to probably bring this area out a little bit. So it's always a good idea when you're doing your garbage mask to test that out. Maybe I need to bring this out just a little bit more. We're still okay, but you know, if I reach out too much further, we're going to have some other issues. But it looks like this area is going to be somewhat of a problem. Now, there are a couple of ways that we have addressed this. The first way is let's position this over to this side of the screen, and we can also scale it up a little bit as well. because as you'll see when we remove the keyed elements, I am actually fairly small in the shot, and the subject here needs to be a little bit larger. And so in this process, just by scaling it up, not even 10%, and generally you don't want to scale it up too much more than 10% with your layers before they start to degrade, but it is one way that we can get around this problem. Okay, now of course the other solution is to go in and rotoscope around that. You could use the roto brush, or you could just create a mask and hand manipulate that, but for now this I think is going to work in this particular instance. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to key out this background, and you'll notice that even in this key, in this small set, there are areas that are lighter and there are areas that are darker on our backdrop, and this is going to cause us a bit of a problem, but there are a number of ways that we can fix this, and there are a number of keying effects that you can apply to this clip. For the longest time, I would have used a color difference key, and the color difference key is when you look at it, it's really kind of confusing. But once you understand how it works and how you can use it, you can very quickly go in and start to adjust and tweak this and get something that looks right. But most people don't use the color difference key. You can go online and you can find a tutorial that I wrote years and years and years ago on how to use the color difference key. Today, most people are going to use Keylight, and Keylight is a fantastic effect. It's included in the last couple of versions of After Effects. And really all we need to do is we need to use our color eyedropper, and we're going to go pick a color that best represents the range of values of our green. And if we look over here in our info bar, you can see that our range goes from green at 100, red 44, B 47, all the way up here to where our red is at 76, our green is at 163, and our blue is at 89. And it really ranges in there. It looks like about 160 is where it tops out. A good rule of thumb, and you don't always have to do this, but a good starting place whenever you're picking your color to key out is pick something near the subject. And so if this were me, I wouldn't be so worried about picking a green down here as much as I would be concerned about picking a green around the head area. And so I'm just going to go ahead and click. And you can see that this does a pretty good job in one click of getting rid of most everything that we need in this shot. Now, one thing that you should keep in mind when you're working with green screen is that looks can be very deceiving. Okay? Down here, it looks like it's keyed, but if we scrub through here, or if we create a RAM preview, you can see all of this little dirt and noise all around here. That really shows us that this is not a perfect key. So we need to go back and fix that. And it's real easy to do. One thing that we can do when we are keying our elements is to don't necessarily worry about this background right away. And you notice if I turn that background off, it hides, it shows up a lot of the noise and problems that we have in this key. One way that you can show off a key relatively easily with a backdrop, if you don't like the checkerboard, is to add a solid layer to your composition. And typically when I'm working with green, I like to use the color orange and add that into my backdrop, because green and orange are colors that are opposite one another. And so it's real easy to see where the problem areas are. I mean, even up here, when we didn't have a backdrop, that looked pretty clean. But here we can really see the areas that don't key out cleanly. So let's go back to our layer. And the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to go into the screen matte. There's two things I'm going to do. Screen matte is where we're going to be working. But instead of final result, what I'm going to do from our view option is go down under the combined matte. And this shows us a black and white view of our scene. And if you remember our discussion on mattes and masks, you know that when we are masking something out or when we're matting something out, things that are white are opaque, meaning that you don't see them. And things that are black are things that are keyed through, that are completely transparent. And areas that are gray, there's a lot of gray here in this shirt area, a lot of gray up here, a lot of gray down here. These are those areas that are semi-transparent. And again, if we go back to the final result, notice that in this black area, it doesn't look like there's anything that should be problematic. But it's only when we go to the combined matte and we see what's going on with our grays and our lights and our darks that we really see a lot of problems with this key. That's okay, we can fix this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to use Screen Matte, and this kind of works like levels. If you've used levels before, you know that we can adjust our clip black value, and that will crush our blacks. And you know that we can use our clip white value, and that will clip our whites. And we can go back in and make some further adjustments to this. I could bring my blacks up a little bit more. Let's look at our final result now. And we'll see that we have a much cleaner mask just by clipping our blacks and our whites. Think of this again as the levels. And I can go in and use my softness if I'm worried about too hard of an edge. I can go in and I can soften up that edge just a little bit. And we'll start at 5. And very quickly we have a nice edge around everything. This subject, me, is far enough away from the backdrop that we really don't have to worry about too much spill. If you're noticing some orange on the arm, that is not from the backdrop showing through. That's actually from the Keylight that's showing through. And the reason why we used that orange light is so that it matched a little bit better with these lights that were bouncing off this direction, so we're trying to light it in that sense. But this looks pretty good. We can go and we can look at this under the status, and the status shows us the white areas that are the, again, the opaque, the black areas that are transparent, and this gray border that's showing up around here is actually where we had our softness. So if I roll this down to 0, you can see that we have very little gray. Now this is showing us an area that we may still have some problems. But I can bring that back up and notice that it gives us that nice soft border. I could try to clip those blacks a little bit more. Ooh, that's getting pretty high up there. But I think our final result still works fairly well. And again, we could run a RAM preview and see how this looks just against the orange background. If I was working against with a blue background, I would probably still use orange, just because it really shows up nicely. And again, if you notice the glasses previously were still causing a problem with some gray areas, and that's keying out right there. That is somewhat of a problem. We could go in and fix that relatively easily by just duplicating this layer and masking out the head. But I think we're probably going to be okay with that. I mean, we're not really seeing anything that is fully transparent in there. Well, maybe we do. So let's go in and see if we can fix that. Let's try to grow our mask just a little bit. See if we can bring that up to 3. What that's going to do is it's going to expand our mask that's been created. So we're actually taking this white border area and we're spreading it out. And you can see we've kind of filled in that hole. And because we still have that softness going on, we're still okay. We don't have any. Well, now we're starting to get something that does happen is we're starting to get a gray halo that appears around the subject. And that is definitely something that we don't want. Notice we don't have it there. So what I've done is I've just tweaked this a little bit more. Looking at our final result, I may bring this back to about 3. And that kind of closes up that hole a little bit more. Still have some problems down here. But you can see we've really clipped this black and white quite a bit. This probably isn't as nice as we probably should have it. But we have addressed the issue of that halo around the subject. And this will work. This is a little cruddy area down here. But again, this part of the arm is in shadow, just like over here and here. We do have a lot of contrast in this object, but this black that we see here is not the result of a bad key. Now, here's something else that you can keep in mind. If at first you don't succeed, key again, right? So let's go back here and reset this. This time, instead of picking up a green from here, why don't we pick up a green from way down here? and see what kind of results we get. Again, we are keying out this region. We look at the combined matte. We can now go in and clip our blacks. We're not having to go up as high this time. We're not having to come down as low. Well, we are probably coming down about 83 where we were at before. But we're certainly not as high as we were on our blacks. Still have a little bit of that gray halo going on around here. Tighten that up just a little bit. This works, this pretty tight matte works pretty well for this subject. I mean, there's not a lot of hair up here, but if someone had really stringy hair, flying away hair, we could have some problems. Notice how we get a pretty good key here with the glasses refracting the light. We still have this little area right here that I'm not totally thrilled with. But it looks like we can tweak it just a little bit, and then we can take a look at our final results. All right. Not too bad. We can turn that background off and replace it with our real virtual set. And now we need to just color correct this guy, give him a little bit of color. So we're just going to go in and apply our color correction. And why don't we just start with brightness and contrast to begin with. I'm going to pop this up a little bit. Ideally, we should have some meters that we're looking at, but I think just a little bit of contrast there will help. And then let us add curves. We could actually get rid of the brightness and contrast. And we could put a little color into the face, not much. Just to give a little bit more color into that face. Maybe we can take out some of the green. And blue. There you go. And now that orange gel that we have here on the side kind of matches closer with these lights, or the light that would be reflecting off of the brick wall. That's keying in After Effects. It's really very simple, very easy. Now, again, this is a pretty simple subject. If we were using someone with a lot of hair, braids, blonde hair, whatever, someone standing too close to the green screen, we could be presented with a lot of other problems and challenges. Very quickly, before I wrap up on this, I'm going to show you how I created this backdrop. So here I've just gone in and I'm going to take and create a new composition. I'm going to make it 1020 by 720. This is a little bit over 15 seconds long, although the length really isn't going to matter. We'll just set it at 15. Here's a real good hint when you're trying to do seconds and you're, instead of typing in all the zeros, if you hit a period, that'll move you to the seconds mark. If you hit another period, that'll move you to the minutes mark, and you hit another period, that'll move you to the hours mark. So 15 dot will give us a 15-second composition. I'm going to bring my background movie in, and I'm just going to go up and scale it to fit comp width. And actually, I'm going to scale it up just a little bit more so we get that black out of there. And then on top of that, I'm going to put my stock footage of my countdown. And I'm just going to use a very simple transform mode. I think screen is what I ended up using. We can, yeah. And not screen. Not add. Use a multiply here. And what I've done then is to take this comp, and I'm just going to call it, rename it, or we could actually call it monitor countdown. I'm just going to bring it down here into my composition. And for this, what I did was I actually turned it into a 3D layer so I could get this to line up a little bit easier. Now, you very easily could go in and do a corner key, but I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to push this far enough down into the background to where it was, oops, filling up the area. And then it fills up that monitor. And it follows that perspective fairly close. W to rotate. And just kind of eyeball it. We've messed around with this quite a bit to get text and fonts and everything to line up. The other thing that we do in this piece is we move this, because this is right at the very end of where I'm speaking. We actually move this to the frame right before you would have your 0, so that when we are done, we transition right into our intro animation. So what we end up with is this piece that starts out very dirty, but then as the host talks, it counts you down right into where we need to be. And so this is what we've done for this particular intro spot. So it's really easy to get rid of the that audio. All we have to do is turn that off. I'm not really concerned about that. What I am concerned about, though, just before we get out of here, is now that I look at this move, now instead of that black halo, we kind of have a white halo around the subject. So I'm going to go back here to Keylight. And on my... I'm going to contract this about 2 pixels. That's actually shrinking that mask, that matte, shrinking that matte, and then with the softness, pushes that back out and creates a little bit more of a natural wrap of that light, create a little bit more softness. And I like that a little bit more. And here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead and save this project. And this is what makes this so easy, because now when I go back into Premiere, it will update. And I've already got my project done. And because I'm still working in the same timeline, and I can save this project too, when I go over to this next element, I can replace it with my After Effects composition, creates a new project, and normally what I would do is call this like intro, learn to spell, and then segment 1A. And when I open up segment 1A, what I can do is just go back to my intro, and I can start copying things like position. Since this is all done at the same time, I can paste that in. I can position, or I can copy the scale and paste that in. I can go in and copy my mask. And I can also copy all of my effects, my curves and my Keylight. Then just drop in these 2 elements. And I can then I'm halfway there on this next segment. Now, granted, the thing that will change is the monitor, so I will duplicate this monitor, and instead of monitor countdown, it's going to be monitor segment 1A. And then whatever I'm talking, oops, go back here. I can delete that, and I can import whatever graphic that I'm talking about in this first segment. Back here in segment 1A, I can highlight the monitor, hold down my command key. Yeah, sorry, it's the option key. Hold down the option key, and it replaces that other composition. So again, I'm halfway to getting the this next segment done. I'm just going to extend that out, and I can extend this one out. This one won't extend any further, but that's okay. We can go and change the settings on this. There's really nothing that changes. I'm going to change this to 30 seconds. Now I can draw that out for as long as I need to. And then all I need to do is go in here to monitor segment 1, add and animate my elements. And then when I go back over to Premiere, again, I've got my next element done, and I can just move all the way throughout the entire project. Of course, once I'm done editing, I can send this off to Adobe Audition. I can compress it down and get it ready for the web. In fact, there's a great export in Premiere Pro that sends it right to YouTube. But that's kind of the basic workflow in this project. And what's really great with the Adobe CS6 products is that the integration between them, After Effects, Premiere Pro, and Photoshop, and Audition, is that I can just run these back and forth with one another and really have a solid workflow for my entire piece. So I can send this, for example, when it's time to go do the audio, I can edit in Adobe Audition. It sends it off. I would have already put in my music elements into this Premiere Pro timeline. And then when I'm sending it off to Audition, really all that is just doing the fine-tuning, the cleaning up of the audio, the compression, the mixing, and then I would export that back into Premiere Pro and then export the final sequence. So it's really, really fascinating. It's really, really easy, and I really like this integration. So hopefully this little tutorial / walkthrough of my process of editing helps you understand how great it is to work between the Adobe products, as well as showing you a little bit about keying. If you have any questions, just ask in the comment section, or you know my email. Just get a hold of me that way. Thanks.